Hey, welcome to Contentstack Live. I'm your host, Jeff Botter, along with my assistant, Austin Chen. Joining us today is Christine Masters. She's the Senior Product Manager for our Automation Hub here at Contentstack. Hey, Christine, welcome to the program.
I'm good.
The topic of the episode, how to simplify tech stack integrations. I thought maybe just start and I put this in context. This is really about composable. We've had a lot of people on the show talking about composable architectures, and clearly the shift is on. I think a lot of people understand the possibilities and then all the kind of the fanfare around it. Maybe you could help us understand, because I know you speak a lot with customers, just what are some of the more kind of time consuming kind of aspects of quote unquote kind of going composable?
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is a great question, because I think that obviously with, composable technology, it gives you the opportunity of using the best in breed of different kind of SaaS solutions. And the idea being that you can put everything together to create the best implementation for your particular business, unique essentially to you. But as you mentioned, the difficult part is that each of those has to be tied together. And we do have APIs these days that allow the software to essentially talk to each other pretty easily, but you still have to create that bridge between them. And that's where it does take some time. And I think that one thing to call out specifically about that is that type of development work, where it's kind of the same development that 1,000 other people have done, is not necessarily unique to your business. It's undifferentiated. It's something that's the same over and over again. And so any time when we can kind of extrapolate that and take that out and free up developers to work on interesting and unique things that add add value to their business, that's what we're kind of looking to do.
Yeah, and the theme of composability, we see this a lot in kind of the history of kind of tech and technologies. It's out now really kind of focusing a lot on digital experiences and kind of moving away from suites to a stack, right? And kind of then composing that. Maybe you could provide a little bit more color. What does that really mean when you're composing those elements, and what are we trying to integrate? Like, what does that really mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think that anytime you want to build something special for your business and you want it the best of breed of every single of search, of e-commerce, of the content management, anything like that, you want to kind of build it together of things that are really just the best for your business. So, like you said, that this is where we kind of start having to build these integrations. And this is where Automation Hub comes in, is that we've kind of, we're always looking to build and help out customers and kind of take things that are either difficult or time consuming and then make them easier. So that's really where Automation Hub can help out, is that we look at the common integrations and middleware that some of these different situations, where the customers are trying to create bridges between these different pieces of SaaS solutions. And we take the common ones and make sort of these puzzle pieces where they're pre-built connectors, and you can just plug them in, and you don't have to do that development anymore. You don't have to spend time on that anymore. You just very quickly set up one of these connectors, and then it's something that you can get started with instead of a couple of months or a couple of weeks. Now we're talking about something that could just take a couple of minutes to set up.
Wow. Well, okay. So let's unpack Automation Hub maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
You mentioned build a number of times, right? So clearly there's this build mentality when we're talking about composing this stack. We also talk about repetitive tasks. So what's, maybe kind of talk about both of those. Like what's the hard that we're squeezing out, and what's the manual that we're also seemingly, I think, squeezing out?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good thing to point out is that a lot of times we talk about composable, or we talk about Automation Hub as helping with composable and doing the integrations, but there is a big aspect that Automation Hub can also help with repetitive tasks. But to kind of take a step back, we'll think of something like a search engine. So you decide that there's a particular search engine vendor that works really well for your business. It might be faster or, index things in a certain way that's very beneficial to your type of business. And so you want to use that particular vendor. But in order to send all of your items over to that vendor and keep them in sync, and when you delete something in the CMS, it also deletes something in your search engine, that type of thing requires integration. So there's different APIs that you have to use and send the information back and forth whenever you're doing that integration. And again, that's something with Automation Hub where we've actually created a connector with a lot of these search engines.
This is code though, right? That you're ultimately talking about when you say these integrations. It would be something who would have to key in something, right? It's not just point and click in the old world, at least.
Right. I mean, and again, somebody would have to create specific development for that. And now that development doesn't have to happen. It's something that they can just add. But yeah, kind of to your point, there are definitely situations where, not even just integrations, but there are lots of things where somebody might have a task where they're, cutting and pasting something from every day they get a spreadsheet, a CSV file of translations from, one of their, partners. And then somebody has to go in and cut and paste all of those so that they go back into the CMS or something like that. Any of those types of things where you're always adding a tag at a certain point in time, or you're always cutting and pasting something at a certain point in time. Those are the types of things where we can look at ways to create automations that automate and streamline those specific repetitive tasks. So just as a quick example, I think today, actually, we just came out with an Airtable connector. So if you can imagine, if you have a table that has maybe translations in it and you have somebody updating that table, now you could actually set up a integration where anytime the table is updated or anytime the content is updated, you're updating the table and you're keeping that all in sync. No more cutting and pasting. So we want to get rid of all cutting and pasting as much as possible.
Very cool. Are you building that integration that you get? How does a customer get that integration?
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially a connector. And we have, when you're using Automation Hub, there's a series of either a trigger, and a trigger is usually something inside of our system, inside of Contentstack, where I'm creating a new entry, I'm publishing something, I'm doing a release, that sort of thing. Or it can be sort of an HTTP request or something kind of using webhooks. Or we have a scheduler. That's another thing where you can set up an automation that happens every day. We also have a trigger with our new launch product as well for front-end hosting. So all of those are things that can create an event that happens and then essentially just stack actions after that. So every single automation can have multiple different actions that happen after that initial event. And a bunch of different vendors are in our connector database for things like Jira, Amazon, Algolia. We have dozens and dozens of them that are in there, and you just choose them, set them up, and then stack them to create your automation.
Wow. Super cool. And I know you talk a lot almost daily, right, with customers. Can you maybe show something, a use case or, kind of make this more for us?
I'll show you just really quickly. I'll show you this. This one's kind of fun. We actually had a customer who wanted to set up an automation. Again, it was a situation where they were cutting and pasting things quite frequently, that they had a content type, and anytime the content type was changed, they had to get approval from somebody, a manager within the organization. And so anytime somebody changed the content type, they would go into Jira, write a note in Jira to create a new ticket. They would write a quick description that this has been updated. Then the manager would get that ticket. He would go back to the content type, kind of try to figure out what had changed, maybe look at the old version and see if there's anything missing and, that kind of thing. And it was just like a clunky process, again, that they had to remember to do every time and so forth. So what we're working on with them is actually a trigger based on the content type. So again, we kind of look at anytime this particular content type has been updated, that's the trigger that starts this automation. Then what we do here is there's a couple of different steps that happen where I'm actually looking at that particular version for that content type, and I'm finding the previous version so that we can basically compare the two of them.
Yeah.
So then this step is I'm sending it to ChatGPT. So ChatGPT has obviously been all the rage recently, and we do have a connector now for ChatGPT. The really interesting thing about this is that, I don't think that we've thought of all the different ways that ChatGPT can help streamline processes. Obviously, it can do things like write summaries automatically of your content. It can do translations. It can extract keywords or retail personas or a bunch of different things like that. But this is kind of an example where, again, we're taking the two different versions of the content type schema. We're sending them to ChatGPT. And then in here, I'm basically telling it to pretend like you're a programming expert and compare the two schemas, and then essentially write me a report about what's different between these two schemas. Yeah, it's very cool. It does like a great job of this. It does a really great job. It will come back and actually say like, I compared the two schemas. This one added a new field. This one, had, it deleted something. And it doesn't just, again, this is something that ChatGPT is kind of particularly good at, is comparing things and then, writing something obviously in a programming persona about that particular use case. And then we take that particular, the context that they come back, and then I create a task in Jira and I assign it, in this case, to John Kelly. And then I'm taking what ChatGPT said, the summary that came from ChatGPT, and putting that in the ticket. So now when the manager goes and sees that ticket, he gets an analysis from ChatGPT on what's changed, and he can automatically know what specific things have been updated. ChatGPT tells him if the change is major or minor, and then he doesn't have to spend all that time kind of trying to figure out what's going on. He instantaneously can see an example of that.
Wow. Super cool. Or you could probably, unless there's more, you can probably stop sharing that, but I do have a couple of questions just to follow up. One is, that was doable before, or like, that's not even really doable before, partly because obviously they were without ChatGPT. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts, but it seems like you're showing some stuff that like, it's not only saving a bunch of time, but like connecting some things you just wouldn't have been able to do before, Yeah,
and, and obviously, in theory, you could have written some relatively complicated code that would use the Contentstack APIs, grab the different versions. You could write some kind of functionality that compares the different fields together. Having something that, gives you sort of an analysis of whether or not these changes are important or whether or not they're impactful is something that is not really easy to do in code. It's something that ChatGPT really brings to the table as part of, and that's what the artificial intelligence is so incredible at doing these days. So yeah, that's definitely something that's, it's not even something that was that possible to do even just a year ago.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a new field. And like I said, I feel like I'm really excited about putting this in the hands of our customers and seeing what they come up with, because I don't think that we've scratched the surface yet of how incredible and how helpful this can be to some of our processes.
Yeah, that's super cool. Just to clarify, because we had Connor on an earlier episode talking about the AI assistant. Maybe just, I don't want to confuse myself or the audience, but what you showed here is kind of an extension of the AI assistant, or like, no, that's actually another integration that we have.
Yep. It's another integration. It's using, very similar technology. They're both using 3.5 turbo model, which is using OpenAI and ChatGPT. And so the app that Connor was talking about is a integration into the editorial experience. So that's where you're writing your content, you're doing your summaries, that sort of thing. And you basically can like click around in order to interface with ChatGPT within the editorial experience. And I think that, kind of, again, talking to some customers, everybody's very interested in doing that, having something where they're writing the summary for you, helping to write product descriptions, helping to extract keywords. Again, when you have these situations where ChatGPT is not necessarily making up new content, that's where we get kind of dangerous with hallucinations and whatnot. But where it's kind of just rewriting something that already exists, it's really good at that. But one of the things that's very interesting is we immediately find that when you're kind of processing 100 articles per day and you're clicking around doing a summary of those articles, then it kind of gets repetitive. And so again, that's where Automation Hub steps in with our ChatGPT connector. That same action that you were doing with the AI assistant in the editorial interface, when it becomes repetitive and you can trust ChatGPT to make the right kind of decisions in that stage, so that right content, then you can start looking at automating it. I would still recommend to make sure that you have some kind of, quick review process or something like that. That being said, a lot of these tasks, translations, summaries, keyword extraction, ChatGPT is really good at that. And we see very few, if any, problems with that.
Yeah. Wow. That's super cool. Picking up again on Automation Hub, because you had said you just barely scratched the surface. So where's that going? I know you have a ton of ideas, but I'd love to kind of get a sneak peek into kind of like your crystal ball, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. And, I will say that, I'm really excited about the future for Automation Hub. We've got a really great kind of vision for where to go in the future. This is definitely something where, there's other kind of integration providers out there. And we're really digging into both the content aspect and ChatGPT is a really good kind of example of that, where we're showing how this can be used to enhance content operations, content orchestration. So really digging into the content aspect of this, as well as enterprise, right? And I think that that's something that's really where, as you know, Jeff, where we really exist in the market today, is that we're both, obviously content and that composable experience, as well as enterprise. So that's something where we're really trying to dig in with Automation Hub. I will say that we have a really great team. We've actually had a couple new people added this year. We're really excited about the number of the quality and the number of resources that we're putting into this. And we really think that, especially through this next year, we have a lot of growth that's going to happen. Again, we're working really closely with some of our customers on seeing what types of use cases they have and really trying to expand and dig in on those specific use cases. But a lot of things that, we do have a lot of the basics now. We have sort of obviously the triggers and the actions that happen afterwards. And we have a lot of the base connectors and some of the common vendors out there. We did add, actually just today, we have the ability to do repeat paths, which is now where they can make a loop where you're iterating over a loop on some data, which again, that's something that for certain specific use cases that was required. We have the ability to do conditionals. We have the ability to do kind of if-then checks. We also added just today a code block where this is kind of built for business users so that business users can kind of click around in this low code, no code environment. But if you needed to, we want to give developers that capability of really adding in additional functionality if needed. And now they have this code block where they can do, it's basically a Lambda function, kind of a white labeled Lambda function where they can go in there and add in any kind of more complicated code if they need to. So it's really a great combination of a simple interface for business users, but also having kind of a robust advanced mode for developers.
Yeah. Wow. That's super cool. So it sounds like too, we're constantly cranking out new features. Like you just listed them, 2 or 3. Yeah. Amazing.
A really good monthly release cycle on this. And yeah, we're really excited about where this goes in the future.
And we are pretty soon going to be announcing our GA for Contentstack launch. Dean is going to be on one of our future episodes to talk more about that. And you could mention that a little bit. So there's a view that from kind of back end or front end, full stack kind of automation. Is that, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, we obviously, Dean and I work very closely together. We were hired on the same day. So we're kind of nuclear. Yeah. And yeah, we've just been working very closely together to make sure that, all of these things work super, super closely together and work really well together. One of the key things about being composable, obviously, is that, again, you can pick and choose the pieces that you want, but everything together works really, really well. So that's something that, we've been working really closely to make sure that launch has both triggers as well as actions. So you could have something where whenever you deploy some new launch, information, you can launch the new code onto your, and kind of refresh the site. And it just all works really well together. And again, those are built in from the start. So it's very easy to use at the same time.
Yeah. Wow. Super cool. I know, like I mentioned, Dean will be on our future episode. It'd be great just to get a kind of a demonstration of that full kind of stack experience. Cause I think that's so much of like how it all comes together and the ease of which we're kind of facilitating that. I think it's a great kind of showcase. That's we covered so much. That's the set of questions I had. We do have, as you probably know, like a kind of small live studio audience. Anyway, we have a couple of questions that came in. Austin, what do you got?
Yeah, we got a couple. First one's here. Can you clarify, can anyone use Automation Hub, or is it primarily for developers only?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that, and again, just the way that we built this is that it's meant to have a simple interface. All of these things really are just APIs and webhooks and that kind of the language of the internet and of applications talking to each other. And so a developer will be kind of familiar with those concepts. But for a business user, it's very simple. You can, again, have an event, and that whatever that event happens, you have these actions that happen afterwards. And it's very easy for a business user to understand. At the same time, we have a lot of advanced features, the code block, repeat paths, conditionals, so forth, that help a developer kind of dig in there and set up some things and, again, not have to spend so much time doing that middleware and those integrations anymore. So whether it's the business user using it or a developer using it, either way, we're helping you streamline and do those integrations more easily so that you can use that time for real problems and real interesting things that help the value for your business.
Wow, that's super cool. Any other questions, Austin, that you got?
Yeah, we got one more. It seems like this could reduce my need for middleware software like Zapier. Is that true?
Yeah, there's still, there might be situations where let's say your HR automation or Salesforce automation or something like that, where it's still appropriate to use some of those integration services. But again, for enterprise content related situations where you're doing content integrations or integrations for your digital stack, those types of things really that's where Contentstack and Automation Hub together really shine. And so we definitely see that, we have a lot of advantages in those situations over some of those other vendors. And I will say just very quickly that any customer today that is a Contentstack customer actually has 200 free executions per month that's available as part of just setting up your site. So if you wanted to experiment with it, if you wanted to try out, you can actually do a lot with 200 executions. That means that one or more automations has run 200 times. That it's a great way to try it out. You can run some kind of low frequency automations with that. the ChatGPT connector is there waiting for you to test it. So you can kind of think if you have any cool ideas for things to do with that, it's all there. You can go try it out today and let us know if you have any questions.
That's a recurring 200 kind of free.
200 every month. And yeah, going forward, it's not like a 3-month trial or anything like that. Just, going forward, that's what our plan is to have. Every customer gets we call it the Explorer plan, where you can kind of use Automation Hub, try it out, set up some things. Again, a low frequency automation, and 200 executions per month. Yep.
Nice. Excellent. I think that's all the questions that we have. There's so many things that you talked about. So I think we're super excited to have you come back and talk more about what we're seeing with Automation Hub and the different use cases and all of that. But I know there's a number of things that we reference, which we'll make sure are available in the show notes. Yeah. Thank you so much, Christine, Austin, for everything you've been doing. And for all of you out there, see you next time. Thank you very much.
Be sure to check out the show notes for relevant links and content. To learn even more about the power of going composable, head to contentstack.com.